Well, it is good to be back in 2017. This last year for film, 2016, was certainly interesting. It did have a lot of surprises, and it did have a few films that certainly disappointed the fans. One of the films that seems to ride both lines is Rogue One, a Star Wars story, a film that I personally was very excited for and also really enjoyed. And one of the issues that I do have with the film, despite my incredible love and appreciation for it, is the ending because it's an ending that works on some levels, but not entirely with regards to the context and the scope of the film itself. And of course, we're entering spoiler territory, so please proceed with caution. Now, I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I completely understood a lot of the references the film had. However, for someone watching this as a standalone, which is what I kind of believe it was intended to be, a lot of moments, including the ending, don't necessarily make sense. Darth Vader's inclusion in the film was, of course, fan service. While I do understand Darth Vader's an icon at this point, he doesn't necessarily fit the film, in my opinion. He doesn't necessarily contribute a lot to the basic story of the film. He's there more for throwaway scenes or moments just to have him, including a very awkward pun when he's talking to Krennic earlier on, but I digress. Let's get into the ending of the film. Now, we, of course, know the last 5 or so minutes of the film. Jin and Cassian are on a beach and they're about to die, and then it cuts to Darth Vader on Tantive 4. He's slaying rebels, he's chasing after the Death Star plans, and they eventually get the Death Star plans across to Princess Leia, who gets the plans. She looks up, you can see her CGI face, she says hope, and then the ship goes into light speed and credits. Well, I enjoyed the scene. I think any Star Wars fan in the context of the larger universe would enjoy the scene. However, I think having those moments at the end of the film kind of reduces Rogue One from being its own standalone thing that can really function on its own 2 feet, and really reduces it as to, well, an appendix or a footnote in the Star Wars universe. And that was my biggest gripe with it. What I would do really differently is use this minor editing tweak that I think doesn't necessarily require you to get rid of anything in the film or change anything, but just changing the placement of certain scenes can actually send across a different message or make a much larger difference in terms of what you're trying to say. What I would do is, the moment the Empire shoots the beam down from the Death Star onto the planet and the explosion begins where Jin and Cassian are, then I would cut from there to the Darth Vader scene. I would have him, extend his lightsaber and slay the rebels. So immediately, with the beam hitting down on the planet and Darth Vader's extension of the lightsaber, there's already this heightened feeling of what the Empire can do and the scope of the power that they really possess. You have the scene play out just as it does. He kills all the rebels. The plans eventually reach Princess Leia, and she looks up and says hope. But then I don't have the ship shooting out in the light speed. After she says hope, I would cut back down on the planet to Jin and Cassian looking out into the exploding ocean as they stand on the beach, and they hold hands and really embrace their death. They're happy dying because ultimately, if the focus of this film is about the rebellion and is about this band of rebels that, of course, realize what a rebellion is, and I think having them dying at the end, dying happy, dying hopeful, it would really drive home the message of what a rebellion is with regards to the fact that it's one small step. Getting the Death Star plans isn't going to defeat the Empire, but it's a very small and yet important step in this much larger plan, and I think having them embrace their death really shows that they're aware of that. It really shows that they've done their part and they know, and they can in fact die happy knowing that what they've done is going to eventually help defeat the Empire. They're rebels, they embrace it, and their dying moments to close out the film not only leaves the audience with the characters that we've been following on this entire journey, but really drives home the fact that this weird ending of seeing your main characters die is in fact still a happy ending. And I think that that minor tweak of having them close out the film rather than Princess Leia would really make the film stand a lot better, would leave a more lasting impression of these characters, and I think would allow Rogue One to stand on its own 2 feet.